Welcome to the Jboy Show, hosted by Jake Crain, the fastest growing sports show in the nation.
I'm Coach Hugh Freeze.
This is Super Bowl champion Brandon Graham.
Hey, this is DJ Shockley, and you're watching.
And thanks for watching the Jboy Show.
Hello, everybody, and thanks again for joining us on another edition of the Jboy Show. Got another great show coming for you, but before we get there, I do want to shout to our partners at betonline.ag. Head over there today. The online casino is always open. We know Major League Baseball, when they play 500 games in the regular season, you're going to have a lot of time to bet, whether it's parlays, pleasers, teasers, prop bets. We got golf going on, racing as well. So head over to betonline.ag today. They got some great sign-up bonuses, and tell them that Jboy sent you. Got a great show for you today. As I mentioned, very excited to bring in a guy you're going to know, host of the Chuck Oliver Show. You can catch him on 680 The Fan, a doer of many things, has a new podcast I want to get to at the end of the show that's dealing with some very exciting stuff, especially if you've held on to some cards over through the decades. And that's Mr. Chuck Oliver. Chuck, I appreciate you coming on, man.
No, I appreciate the invite, brother. Thank you so much.
Definitely. Well, I want to start out SEC football. Obviously, we know it's a year-round deal. We just kind of getting through spring. I've been going through the conference, kind of talking about how, each team looked in the spring game, even though there's only so much you can ascertain from that. And I want to start in the West, Chuck. When you look at this year, we have a spring practice, which is huge, obviously, for the development, especially for the early enrollees. We know Alabama's talented and they reload, they don't rebuild. But outside of Alabama, what are some storylines you're watching in the West? We know about Brian Harsin. Can A&M do it again with a new quarterback? Kind of what comes to your mind?
Well, I'll go as far west as we can. And I don't know, what comes to your mind when an SEC program pays $75 million for a head coach? Is it
you better win
third in the division?
Yeah.
I don't think so. And there is a lot to love about the Aggies, and whether it's this team or honestly the program, okay? There's so much positive going on there, and a lot of it this year may be concentrated on defense. Love the running backs. I love the diverse skills they have with some of the guys who, like Achane perhaps, Anaya Smith certainly. So there's a lot of really good things going on. I need to find out about the offensive line. I don't know how you get better by losing a 3.5-year starter at quarterback, whoever he is, much less a kid that had the skills and production of Kellen Mond, but then there's something behind it as well. And I mean, this goes all the way back to like the first time I ever saw Jimbo coaching, and I think that was at Auburn like 150 years ago.
Yeah, he coached with my dad at Auburn.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he is. He's very demanding when it comes to quarterbacks.
Yes.
And you have to have that mentality. Well, Kellen Mond, I mean, my gosh, he was perfect for it, and he could take it, and he understood where the coaching was come from. Well, he's gone now. I promise you, Jimbo is not giving scholarships to high school quarterbacks who he thinks won't be able to succeed in his system. But being out there and experienced, proven talent is different than just talent. So I know the kids are skilled. I mean, there's no question about that. But being skilled and being productive in the SEC West, those are two different things. So Texas A&M, like I said, there's so much going on there, but they set the expectation. I did not. When you go to Florida State, a heritage program, and you pluck their coach and then give him a $75 million deal, and in the introductory press conference, you talk about the national championship trophy that you've never earned, but we bought it.
Yeah.
You set the expectations, not me. And so this is one time where an AD, a school president, the coach, nobody at Texas A&M can look around and go, oh my gosh, y'all's expectations are so unreal. You did this, not me.
No, and again, you're forking out that type of money. You expect a return, and we know last year was a big year for them. And you hit on some good points. I want to stay on A&M for a second, and then I want to move a little bit throughout the West. They lose 3 starters on the offensive line. I believe 3 guys that earned all SEC honors. We know how dominant they were up front last year. It may be 4. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. And they really kind of,
it's 4. Only kid coming
That's
back.
right. That's exactly right. Now I know they're high on some of the younger guys like Wyckoff and stuff like that, but it takes time to develop guys up front. It's a totally different animal. It's not like you're playing slot off the ball. Not that that's easy, but it's a totally different animal, and physically it's a totally different animal. So you have to replace that. We know how important that is. not only to the run game, but for the quarterback as well. Kellen Mond was protected pretty much last year. He didn't have to use his feet a ton, but they do return Weidermeyer, who I think is one of the most talented tight ends in the country, if not the most talented tight end. I bet you could give him a basketball and he could be a pretty good power forward as well, just watching him move around. But the defense has changed that program to me. Everybody talks about the offense. A&M's problem has never been scoring, really. You look at Manziel and the way they had and kind of the way they've transitioned. But that team has changed defensively. They're better up front. They can stop the run. They're holding teams to field goal. I mean, they had the number one defense in the SEC last year, and it's amazing how that feeds. So my question to you, Chuck, before we get off A&M is, a lot of it's going to come down to the quarterback. It's all hypotheticals. Let's say the offensive line is above average. They can hold their own. They don't have to be elite. I watched Haynes King and I watched Zach Calzada. And to me, I thought Calzada had to have a better showing in order to win the starting job, just because he doesn't do as much as Haynes King can in the RPO game that I know Jimbo's going to be able to implement in moving the pocket, whether it's sprint out, waggles, boots, things like that. I believe Calzada was 19 for 41 and Haynes was 16 for 31. But do you think that's a battle that's going to continue to go into fall camp? I just know the longer it goes, typically the younger guy wins the longer it goes. At least that's how the past has shown us. But we know Jimbo does favor older guys.
Yeah, he's like a lot of coaches. Give him a veteran quarterback, and that's always the leader in the room. And I agree. Haynes King was a guy that, my hand is raised, and I think a lot of people who cover the team on a daily basis, boots on the beach out there in College Station. The general feel was you've got the athletic quarterback versus the rocket arm quarterback.
Yep.
And Jimbo has had success with both. I will say, though, even when he had a big guy, what people don't realize about a guy like EJ Manuel, he didn't need to be running the football. He was a big guy who needed to stand in the pocket. Jimbo could not force himself to not run EJ. Christian Ponder, same sort of thing. He loves getting quarterbacks out on the move a little bit. Jameis is a guy that he actually was like, okay, maybe we'll keep him in the pocket a little bit.
That's 100% true.
But that's what he loves to do. And so Haynes King, I think, in fact, this was the case. He entered spring with a little bit of a lead. And I think that following spring, since both kids are still in the running, I think it's a good showing for Zach Calzada that he has kind of forced his way to stay in the competition. I don't think either of these kids will transfer either. If you're second on the depth chart behind somebody who does the exact same thing you do, all right, where's that portal out? Let me jump in. But I don't know that it'll be a first string, second string. I think it'll be one guy plays a bunch, one guy plays some. Yeah. And a guy, again, when you're the pocket guy with the big arm and you're playing some, you've got that mentality, I'm going to make enough big throws. I'm going to get out there. I love the competition. I think it went for Jimbo. I think it went exactly how he wanted in spring.
Yeah, and again, if the young guy does have the lead, you want him not looking over his shoulder, but continuing to feel that pressure and not get comfortable. And you do that with a guy like Calzada, who can come in and operate. It may be a little bit different. And again, I'm not trying to bash the kid in the spring game because you can only see so much. But I expect if a guy like that ends up winning the job, he's got to be really efficient. The intermediate passing game, the quick game. And you're right, Jimbo does want to move the pocket. Why? Because it helps you with protection, keeps the defensive end from finding your launch point. And he does a good job. It's funny. I see a lot of kind of parallels in between what Jimbo does and what Brian Harsin did at Boise State. And when he was at the OC of Texas, the way they kind of mix it up from the gun to under center, you get some pro style, you even get some air raid a little bit principles every now and then, especially on third down. We saw some of that last year. But moving on, Chuck, looking at the West, I really want to give you a couple teams here, really three teams, because I believe Arkansas has still got a little ways to go from a personnel standpoint, especially on defense. I love what Sam Pittman's doing down there. I just think it's a numbers game. But when I look at Auburn, you see Brian Harsin, who returns a quarterback in Bo Nix, regardless of how anybody thinks about it, is returning a quarterback. That does mean something, especially in today's game. But when you look at Auburn, LSU, and Ole Miss in the West, how do you feel about those three, starting with Auburn? Brian Harsin, your thoughts on the hire and what you've seen so far through spring? Because I think there's a little more accountability and a little more Marine flavor, I guess you could say, in Auburn from a getting things done standpoint.
If Brian Harsin, they beat Mississippi State, next day, Sunday, Gus gets canned. And I don't say that casually. I'm very fond of him and his wife and just a good guy, loves his family, all that. I understood the need to make a change at that point. So he gets going on that Sunday. If Brian Harsin would have been hired that Tuesday or Wednesday, I think everybody in the fan base, outside the fan base, at Tuscaloosa, everybody would have looked at it totally differently. I think because it happened like a week Tuesday or Wednesday later, that Auburn got a chance to Auburn. And I'm a graduate, and I know we're a dysfunctional bunch over there. And that Kevin Steele thing, when I heard on like Monday or Tuesday that, he'll get an interview. And before I had processed it, it had morphed to, dude, this is real. He's the leader. I was like, that's not so all of that happened. We all know. I'm telling you, if it would have just been Harsin out of the gate, it would have been universally praised. Now, the cool part is we have peeled a couple of pages off the calendar, and I think that the feeling almost universally is really outstanding hire. There is a learning curve because East Alabama is not, Idaho. And we all know what he did with his coaching staff. About half the guys know every high school in the South. About half of them know the Pacific Northwest. But it's a tremendous hire as far as on-field coaching, recruiting, organization. Love it all. And also, you couldn't have gotten to a pair of coordinators that I would like more than Derek Mason and Mike Bobo, specifically given the dynamic that Bo Nix is dealing with right now. So I think it's 3 great hires. It's just that the timing threw people off a little bit.
Yeah, it was. And we all remember the Stop Steal trending on Twitter. That was just one of the craziest things. And, really from the show standpoint, we were a couple months in and that horse race started and it was wild. But when you look at their schedule this year, again, there's no more givens. You play in Arkansas, going down there, that's going to be tough. You go to A&M. You do get Ole Miss at home, but we know Lane in that offense is going to be very formidable. What do you think is a good year for Brian Harsin in year one? You do get Alabama and Georgia at home, but they're so far ahead right now in the personnel and roster structure race. You can't expect too much too early.
Well, it still is Auburn and it's still the Auburn roster. And I mean, you've even got a quarterback in place. We all know the context with Bo, but honestly, I think this is tremendous development for Bo Nix and his own personal journey as a college quarterback. He is so skilled, so talented, hard worker, everything you want. And I think now that there's going to be more of a playbook, system, scheme, et cetera, that kind of fits his skills. So when you ask about the season, like I said, it's still Auburn, it's still an Auburn roster. That's not a program where you ever say, I hope we get 6 wins, hope we get to a
100%. No, I mean, I'm wondering more in the 8, I'm looking at it right now and looking at the schedule, and I'm just a realist. Obviously you want everybody to win every game and the expectation at Auburn's super high and everybody expects to win every game. But do you see them being able to get 9 wins in this schedule? Not that it's a possibility.
It'd be very difficult. And it's not because of the schedule. That offensive line has a lot of very serious work ahead of it. They started all guards last year. I mean, basically there, and then a defensive tackle out on the left side. It just was not a good group. And, I've said Gus fired himself. It was poor evaluation. It was poor recruiting. It was, I don't know, strength and conditioning, coaching, scheme, whatever it is on every single level with the offensive line. You got 5 kids out there busting their tail, doing everything they can. They're personal 100%, not their fault. It's just a case of when your offensive line doesn't work, it will debilitate everything you're trying to get done.
Yeah, it's the engine. It's the heartbeat. You don't go anywhere. You can have the best quarterbacks, best receivers. It doesn't matter. And you talk about Auburn playing with all guards last year. What do they need? Tackle. And if you need tackle, you need to go to monsterbass.com. Use the promo code JBOY10. That's JBOY10. You save 15% off your first order. Here's what they do. They're a subscription fish service, regardless of where you live, whether it's in Montana or down in Key West. If you fish lakes, ponds, saltwater, freshwater, doesn't matter. They're going to know. They're going to send the best bait and jigs your way, whether it's topwater or you hang in the bottom and try and catch the big boys. You need to go to monsterbass.com, use the promo code JBOY10 and save 15%. We're here with Chuck Oliver from the Chuck Oliver Show. You can catch him on 680 The Fan as well. Chuck, really appreciate you coming on, man. Having a lot of fun and just breaking down what we, and again, look, preseason predictions, prognostications, we'll know when it kicks off and we can watch people hit each other that don't have the same jerseys. But you look at LSU, and I got a few more questions about the West, then we'll move to the East. Looking at LSU, quarterback battle down there, which is good. There's nothing wrong with competition. You brought that up earlier. To be honest with you, to go back to Auburn, I think Bo Nix would have been helped, regardless of Gus Malzahn's scheme and stuff like that, to have a little bit of competition behind him. I think more of a demeanor standpoint. But again, that falls on the coaches. You have to set that culture. And I think Brian Harsin has. But looking at LSU, Chuck, Max Johnson, to me, is a guy that can do really a lot of what Jake Peetz wants to do with the RPO. He's left-handed, so he can do it from a different side, kind of pitch backwards, is able to make all the throws. We saw him against Florida, and he can run, so you really do have to respect it. Then you have Miles Brennan on the other side, more of a pocket passer, but looked pretty good last year when he was in there. Even against Mississippi State, really kept him in the game. But how do you see LSU going into this year? Because, again, I'm a firm believer they're better as an outsider. They really are, in my opinion.
Well, they're a lot better than they showed last year. And in the final two games, even, part of that was a Florida thing, but you had a true freshman go into the swamp. They were throwing the football out of the end zone in his first series. And so I was like, all right, that's kind of reflective of what they think of Max Johnson. But I'm a big Miles Brennan fan as well. And they're different quarterbacks. They really are. Different. And I think people do forget how well Brendan was playing. And it wasn't just the Missouri game as well. He wasn't great in the opener, but kind of found his legs as the game went along. I think week 2 was Vanderbilt, and so he had some success there as well. But I thought he played well for the 3 games he was in there. And I like him, honestly, to win the job. And it's kind of against what I believe, my opinion, is Ed Ogeron was wanting Max Johnson to win that job. The way I saw it put, and I thought it was perfect, that you have a lot more trust in Miles Brennan running the offense. Max Johnson earned the trust of the team last year. And so it's an experience thing versus a demeanor thing. And I think they're both positives. I mean, if you have 2 right answers, bully for Coach Ogeron.
Yeah, no, and it's kind of similar, I guess, but not very, because you do have more experience from Max Johnson and Miles Brennan than you do from Haynes King and Zach Calzada. So it's interesting to watch these quarterback battles. And Alabama, Chuck, we know how well they've recruited. You look at the offensive line class they signed last year. Some of those guys are early enrollees. Physically, they already look the part. Going to take some time to get their feet wet. I think they got a good game against Miami in the first one. Bama will probably cover. They always do. But when you look at this Alabama team, you look at Bryce Young, they lose all the talent at wide receiver. Hall's going to be a heck of a player. We know what Mechie is. Cameron Latu is a really good prospect at tight end. Billingsley, we could go down the list. But do you see Alabama not struggling, but getting their feet wet a little bit early and then gaining more momentum as those guys get more experience? Because to me, especially up front, some of those young guys are going to need some playing time, but it's really nice in practice when you can go up against NFL defensive linemen to prepare yourself for the season. That helps as well.
Yeah, I keep thinking that. And then I see Hurts or Tua or Mac Jones, or let's not forget against Southern Cal, at least Blake Barnett did start that game. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, well, they've got all this talent to replace. And all these first round, they're going to struggle 56-3.
Yeah.
I think that was the total that night against Southern Cal, 56-3. And if it wasn't 56-3, it was like whatever, 55-17 or whatever it was. They beat Louisville, a decent Louisville team, I thought, in the opener a couple of years back. Florida State, 1 versus 3 or 2 versus 5 or whatever it was. I did color on that game, and that was about 2 series in. I was like, FSU cannot win today.
No.
I keep waiting for what's true about every other program to be true about Alabama, and it never is. And so, it'll be different. And that's what I keep asking people in Tuscaloosa. I was like, what's the offense going to look like? But as far as the effectiveness and the production and the eventual outcome, I don't have a lot of questions. Really don't.
Yeah,
Nick Saban, he's had, I think, 19 straight recruiting classes across 2 programs. Every single kid that's ever taken a scholarship from him and stayed 4 years, every kid's gotten a national championship ring. Some have gotten 2 or 3.
That's just insane. I don't think anybody will ever do that again. I don't know if it's been done before, but I don't think anybody will ever do that again. Chuck, want to move to the East as we wind down here. I think you'll agree with me. It seems like it's Georgia and everybody else. You still got to play the games. And I want to get to quick trigger here in a second because I got some questions about the East. But when you look at Georgia, and this has been a sentiment that's been echoed, it's Georgia's year, it's Kirby's year, they're ready, this, that, and the other. I firmly do believe, though, and me, it's more about JT Daniels and if he can stay healthy, because if he does, even without Pickens, physically, Georgia just looks superior to a lot of teams. I mean, you look at a guy like Amarius Mims, who looks like he's 35 years old in the body of an 18-year-old, looks like a 6-7 year NFL veteran. I love Matt Luke. I think he's the best offensive line coach in the country. And I'm very interested because I want to ask about Dan Lanning. But when you look at Georgia, are they set? Would you say this is a year where they're set up about as good as they possibly could be?
With a returning experience at quarterback, who I expect to be used in a dynamic way, yes. They've had returning experience at quarterback. They had 2 years of that with Jake Fromm. Was not really used in a dynamic way, and that's fine. It worked almost every Saturday for Kirby. But then there are those Saturdays where it doesn't work, where somebody else decides that they can load up and be even more of a man than you. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think he's going to give Todd Monken some rope, and it's going to be a modern-looking college football offense.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if they're going to take some shots early on early downs. I wouldn't be surprised if first time they got the ball against Clemson, they took a shot on the first play or one of the first 2 plays to kind of set the tone, because I think Clemson's going to play the safeties a little bit down early without Pickens and kind of feel them out with that stable of running backs they have. But Dan Lanning, we keep hearing that name, which is a great thing for him. It means you're having success. Have heard his name mixed for the Kansas job. He's from Kansas City. Chuck, what's kind of your feeling on Dan Lanning, the DC at Georgia?
I think he's done a tremendous job, and this is what's now. I don't know if Kansas is supposed to happen, but it's supposed to happen that if you're a coordinator on certainly a 10, 11 win team consistently in the Southeastern Conference, you're not going to be a coordinator very long. I don't think Mel Tucker is much of a head coach. He got hired twice. So that's just kind of what happens. Sam Pittman, again, I don't know what the outcome's going to be at Arkansas. I know that all the players love him and he's genuine and he loves that program. He got hired. It's supposed to happen that way. And so if he gets another job, then that's just next in line, man.
Yeah, it's almost like that thing they used to show in the textbook in school when they're teaching you about rain, how the cycle, how it comes down, then it goes back up. That's about how it is in the coaching world with coordinators at the highest level. And that's what you hope as a head coach. I mean, you look at the Nick Saban coaching tree, but looking at the rest of the East, Florida lost a ton, get Emory Jones. I'm not 100% sold on them. When you look at that league, you look at Kentucky, you look at Missouri. I really like Drinkowitz. Obviously what Stoops has done there, especially up front, now that they may actually throw the ball around a little bit, I think it'll open up the offense and take a little bit of pressure off that defense. But outside of Georgia, is there any intriguing story to you in the East that maybe somebody could finish second that's not normally finishes second? Because I think Florida may take a step back this year.
Well, I think Emory Jones is the key. I don't think this is an adjustment year for Dan Mullen. Kyle Trask was the adjustment, as impressive as that is. And nobody's talking about that. Emory Jones is actually what Dan Mullen wants to do. So Florida could win the East absolutely this year. As far as a this year league, it's a little much for anybody else involved, including a great job that I think Eli has already done at Missouri, starting there. Mark Stoops at Kentucky as well. This really is a 2-team race in the East this year. There's just too much transition going on.
Yeah, I'm gonna push back on you on that one, Chuck. I think Kentucky or Missouri finishes second in the East. I just got a feeling it's my spidey senses tingling, I guess you could say, and we'll see how it plays out. I just looking at what Florida lost with Pitts, with Tony, which to me, Kyle Pitts is an absolute elite player. He's an alien. I think if he's a guy that you have a chance to draft, I would draft. It's going to be interesting to see, but you're right. I think that's a point not a lot of people understand. You look at Dak Prescott, the guys that Dan Mullen had, that type of offense, a quarterback that can run. We talk about moving the pocket with Haynes King and Jimbo. I think Dan does such a good job, especially on third down. I think he's one of the best play callers in the SEC in the country. But all right, Chuck, going to play a little quick trigger. Got 5 questions for you, man. And then want to talk about your new podcast, which is really intriguing. And I think it's really cool stuff. But if you're ready, man, you can step inside the Thunderdome. We can knock this out.
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Chuck Oliver from 680 The Fan, host of the Chuck Oliver Show. I'm going to let him plug the podcast as well at the end. We're going to play a game of quick trigger, and here we go. Question 1, Chuck. For the next 3 years, are you buying LSU or Auburn?
Auburn. Coaching.
Okay. No, question number 2. Better year, Texas A&M or LSU?
A&M.
Good. Give me a surprise SEC contender.
I want to say Missouri. I don't know if they've got the ponies to follow through on it, though, but they're going to have a little bit of an advantage on the sidelines almost every Saturday.
I like that call. Will Tennessee be back in the next 15 years?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, Chuck, man, I appreciate it. That was fantastic. Really quick. That's why we call it Quick Trigger. Always interested to see what everybody thinks on some of those. But Chuck, please tell everybody about your new podcast and really what it covers, because it's cool stuff.
Yeah, I realize college football 100% of the time is pretty awesome, but, you need some diverse interest. And I've been collecting baseball cards since I was a second grader. And as luck would have it, one of the largest dealers in America wound up growing up in the same town I did. We've known each other since elementary school. So we do a podcast called The Collector and the Dealer, and you can get that at thepodcastpark.com or wherever it is that you get your podcast. It's about the sports card trading industry, the hobby, all angles of it, and it comes out about once a week.
Awesome, man. Well, it's really intriguing. Like I said, I gotta go in the attic and get some of my old cards out and see if I can flip it and hit a lick on one of those. But please tell everybody also, I know you're on 680 The Fan. Where can they find the Chuck Oliver Show?
Chuck Oliver Show, we're across 9 states and 51 stations every single day, as well as at the Podcast Park as well. Chuck Oliver Show, you can get the podcast. You can like, subscribe if you listen on radio. Like I said, we're basically Louisiana to Florida, up around to Kentucky, just a big circle there every single day for 2 hours.
Awesome, man. Well, Chuck, I really appreciate you coming on, brother. I know you're a busy man. Excited to get you back on and talk a little more ball with you as we start to sprint toward the season. It'll be here before you know it.
Absolutely. Invite me anytime, brother.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you guys joining us as well. Head to thejboyshow.com, get some merchandise, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. It's been another edition of The Jboy Show, and Jboy's gone.
The Jboy Show is produced by David Cohn, Technical Director Dave Hammock, Creative Director David Culbertson, Audio Engineer Feyzan Shareef, Production Assistants Blaine Crain and Kyle Orr, Executive Producers Jake Crain, Vince Thompson, Steve Chamberlain, and David Cohn. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, thejboyshow.com, for updates regarding our newest apparel and merch designs. Win the water cooler with The Jboy Show.